Hey guys, welcome to every official MCU ranking. We got all 38 Marvel entries, every MCU movie and Disney Plus series from Iron Man 1 to She-Hulk. Now, for the time being, I will not be including any of the Netflix Defenders stuff, or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., or any of the Marvel TV stuff pre-WandaVision. Just because it's pretty murky on whether or not that stuff is fully canon, although we've had hints that some of it is. Also, this will not include any of the one-shots or I Am Groot miniseries, as I believe those are too short to be compared to any of the actual movies or series. This also won't include any of the multiverse movies that don't include the main MCU stuff, such as the original Spider-Man movies, the X-Men movies, the Deadpool movies, or the Venom movies. So, at number 38, our bottom spot, I have Thor: The Dark World. This movie is just really bland, and I don't think most people like it, to be honest. The villain Malekith is so boring and so unlikable. Now, it isn't the worst movie I've seen, but it's definitely pretty bad, especially for MCU standards, and also just feels like filler between the Avengers and Age of Ultron. And the only real deal of importance we get from this movie is it introduces another Infinity Stone. Though, I will say I did enjoy Thor and Loki's characters as usual, but it still wasn't enough to save the movie by any means. At 37, we got The Incredible Hulk. Now, this movie is often forgotten about, but it's still an MCU movie, even though Bruce Banner is no longer played by Edward Norton, and now by Mark Ruffalo. Now, I did enjoy Edward Norton as the Hulk, to be honest. This movie is probably what a lot of people consider to be the best interpretation of the Hulk, though I do think it is a very good version of the Hulk, and definitely better than what we got post-Infinity War. I think the best version of the Hulk is the Hulk in the first Avengers movie. I think Mark Ruffalo plays a much better and likable Bruce Banner. That being said, Norton was still great, but this movie again is just so flat until the end. Though I really did like Abomination in this movie, and the overall story, though it's definitely bottom tier when it comes to MCU outings. On to number 36, Captain Marvel. Now, I just want to start this off by saying I have nothing, and I mean nothing, against the character, nor Brie Larson. In fact, her character was the best part of this movie. The reason I have it this low is because it just feels like filler between Infinity War and Endgame, and the story is just kind of boring. There's a lot of good things in this movie. I like Carol Danvers. I like the way they told her origin story. I like the cat. I like Nick Fury. It's definitely not a bad movie, just a movie I didn't have much interest in when watching it. Compared to other things we've gone within Marvel, though, I definitely am hyped for the sequels, the Marvels. Now, number 35, we have my least favorite Avengers movie, Age of Ultron. It hurts to put this one so low, but I really felt like this was just a huge commercial for Phase 3. And Ultron felt really wasted in this movie. James Spader, too. I really just felt underwhelmed in this movie, especially considering this was an Avengers movie, and a movie under a Captain America title that came out the next year was so much better. I did enjoy the introduction of Wanda, Quicksilver, and Vision, even though Quicksilver was off pretty fast. But again, it just really felt underwhelming the whole time. At number 34, we got Black Widow. Now, it's unfortunate I have to put this movie so low on the list, given the anticipation I wanted for a Black Widow movie for years. The main issues I have with this movie is that when it came out after Black Widow was dead in the MCU timeline. Although it did take place after Civil War, though it just seemed kind of pointless and late at this time. Though the biggest issue was the villain, and I'm not talking about Dreykov. I'm talking about the Taskmaster. They completely slaughtered the character, though I am hopeful they will give Taskmaster a better opportunity in the future. Some good things about this movie was the introduction of Yelena and Red Guardian. I believe there were some great moments in this film, especially surrounding those two characters. Now, moving on to number 33, Iron Man 2. Now I just want to start by saying this movie has a lot going for it. Tony's arc and growth in this movie is fantastic. The things that really bring this movie down is the villain. Although the actor was great, and some of the lines he says, like,
If you can make God bleed, then people will cease to believe in him.
Whiplash just felt very underused and kind of overall boring. Though I do appreciate the character study they did on Tony, and the fact that they introduced Black Widow and a real introduction on Nick Fury, the rise of War Machine, it's still far from a top tier movie, and again, just feels like filler before the first Avengers movie, to be honest. At number 32, we have our first Marvel Disney Plus series with Miss Marvel. Now, I just want to say the introduction of the character has been one of my favorite things in Phase 4, though it isn't enough to push the series higher up on the list. The protagonist characters work really well, but the main issue lies in the villains. I feel like if they were just to make the villains damage control, it wouldn't be that bad, and would help the show a lot. Though, the chemistry between the characters work really well. The story overall, with the villains, just felt flat and generic, though I am very excited to see Imani Vellani and the future MCU projects as Miss Marvel. At number 31, we got Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now, with the show, I felt like it had a lot going for it, with the development of Falcon turning into the new Captain America. It did a good job with US Agent and making him so hateable with the audience. It did okay with digging deeper with the Winter Soldier, but I feel as they kind of forgot about him as the series progressed. I enjoyed Zemo and all the other characters that showed up, like Sharon and the Dora Milaje. Though, again, the biggest issue with the show is the villains. The Flag Smashers, although they had somewhat a solid motive, they weren't appealing. Also, some of the dialogue in the final episode just kind of fell flat. I couldn't really place it any higher, to be honest, though I think Captain America New World Order will be a top tier Marvel project in the future. At number 30, we got the latest movie entry with Thor: Love and Thunder. I think this movie really suffers from the overuse of comedy and the underuse of Gore the God Butcher. Although the motive of the character is shown amazingly, it just doesn't show much of his power and the damage he can do outside of the first scene. Though some great moments here and there with the mighty Thor, I feel like they did her story arc great, and the overall message of the movie was amazing, with choosing love over revenge and hating other negative aspects of life. Though the first half of the movie after the first scene just feels really silly to me. But regardless, still a pretty good movie. Moving on to number 29, we got the first Thor movie. This movie is good. It does a great job of the balance of the action, the romance, and the comedy in one movie. It's a great dive into what makes Thor a great and lovable character, and does a great job setting up one of the best villains in the MCU. I don't have any actual issues with this movie besides some nitpicks, and other than the fact that it just isn't as enjoyable as the stuff ahead of it, in my opinion. At number 28, we got She-Hulk. This show just finished up a couple nights ago, and let me just say that this show is ridiculously overhated. A lot of people are saying this is the worst thing Marvel has ever made, and I don't think that at all. Although it does have some issues, such as the filler episodes, like the wedding episode and the Abomination Sanctuary episode, the sometimes messy dialogue, and of course the CGI that is just horrendous. Though, outside of that, I think the show is pretty solid. Daredevil was brought back into the MCU beautifully. I love the cameos. Jen Walters herself is pretty cool. Loved the change from the 6-episode format. It definitely felt more like a TV show. Also, the finale was just spectacular and really creative and unique. Not gonna lie though, during my first watch of the finale, I wasn't sure how to feel about it, and felt overall just really confused. But after the second watch, I turned to like it, and loved how it critiqued the Marvel formula overall. Overall, great show. At number 27, we got the Hawkeye series. See, the issue I have with some of these Disney Plus series is they really feel like a movie that were cut up into 6 20 to 30 minute segments. Though some series do work really well, I don't think this one worked well and might have benefited if they were turned into movies or specials on Disney Plus. Though the show does have some cool things like bringing in back Yelena, the introduction of Kate Bishop and Echo, and even brings back the Kingpin from the Netflix series. Hell, it even has Tony Dalton acting in the series. Though I think it would have just benefited a bit more if it was a movie, and overall I don't think it competes with a lot of the other stuff ahead of it. Now on to number 26, we got Ant-Man and the Wasp. A very underrated movie in my opinion. It was really fun and enjoyable. Ghost was a great antagonist. Ant-Man and the Wasp's chemistry worked really well. It does though feel like a bit of filler between Infinity War and Endgame, but besides that, it's really a great movie. With number 25, we got the first Ant-Man movie. I loved the fun feeling of this movie. It's very enjoyable and definitely feels different to most other Marvel projects we've gotten before it. Paul Rudd is an amazing choice for Scott Lang. Michael Douglas is a great Hank Pym. Evangeline Lilly is a great Hope Van Dyne. Loved the supporting characters, especially Louise. I loved the Falcon cameo. The villain Yellow Jacket was decent and definitely not the worst nor best villain we've gotten. But overall, I think this movie deserves more appreciation when it comes to the MCU. Now, with number 24, we got another very overhated Marvel project in my opinion, which is the Eternals. I think this project really shined to show the philosophical side of Marvel. The main issue I think me and most people had with this was the overabundance of introductions of characters, and it just felt like a lot was happening in a short time. The movie definitely would have benefited with a longer runtime or being split into a Disney Plus series. Though I did like what I was seeing, the characters were interesting for the most part, and we understood their motives and how hurt they were for being used to destroy the planet that they came to love, as well as being lied to. Overall, a pretty decent Marvel entry. At number 23, we got our first Marvel special presentation with Werewolf at Night. I loved the experimenting Marvel did with this, trying out something completely new. It truly surprised me. Now, it could have benefited with a longer runtime, but I think overall it was still fine. Loved that Man-Thing and the werewolf were introduced, of course. Elsa Bloodstone was a great character. I did wish we got a bit more development on the other monster hunters, but it's just nitpicking at that point. Love the use of gore and definitely has me excited for the future of Blade and Deadpool, and hopefully Midnight Suns. At number 22, we got Captain America the First Avenger, a classic Marvel movie origin story right here. It shows why Captain America is the great character he is and why he's so beloved. Everything in this movie just works out great, and it's technically my least favorite Captain America movie, which shows you how great his trilogy is. Though, if I could fix anything, I'd fix the montage part. To be honest, it kind of rushes through a bunch of events in the movie, but overall, it's still a great movie. Before we move into the top 20, at number 21, we got WandaVision. It has an amazing start, an even better middle. It does kind of fall apart at the end though, and turns into a basic Marvel project, though it doesn't take away from the overall creativity and beauty of the show. It really shows Wanda going insane over her grief of losing Vision, and then her development into becoming the Scarlet Witch. Agatha was okay, though it wasn't really necessary to have her in the show, to be honest. Though, not a bad addition. It's just that the main villain for Wanda is Wanda. Also, the waste of Evan Peters didn't make me happy, though it was a nice callback to his Quicksilver, and who knows, with the multiverse open, we'll probably see him soon. Again, a really good and creative Marvel project right here. At my 20th pick, we've got the first Avengers movie. This was the first time in movie history we saw all these characters from different movies teaming up together in such a beautiful way, and it worked out so well. It combined the stories of Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, and Hawkeye so wonderfully. Loki was an amazing villain in this movie, truly showed his chaotic side, and definitely set up the Infinity Saga and MCU as we know it thanks to the success of this movie. At number 19, we got Spider-Man Far From Home. I've been waiting for years to see Mysterio show up in a movie, and I was not disappointed by his outing in this movie. This movie does some great things with moving along MJ and Peter's relationship, showing how Peter is grieving over losing Tony, and Mysterio is a great villain in this, and I'm very happy to see Jake Gyllenhaal play him. Also, it has set up one of the best Marvel movies ever. For number 18, we got Spider-Man Homecoming. I know people have mixed opinions over MCU Spider-Man, but I thought this movie was really great. It showed us how Peter had to be Spider-Man on his own without the suit after Tony strips it away. And the overall story is him trying to move too fast in the superhero life when he's just simply not ready. Vulture has to be a top 5 villain in the MCU for me. Michael Keaton played him beautifully, and his writing is amazing. Just overall, a really great Spider-Man movie. Only thing I changed is make Shocker more interesting and more part of the story, as he's one of my favorites from the comics. On to number 17. We got Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This movie felt very organic and has a great story. Some of the best fight scenes we've gotten in any MCU film. I love Shang-Chi's character, and I'm so glad the director is also directing Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. Loved how they fixed the Mandarin a bit, made him someone with actual powers, even though it isn't completely comic accurate. Though, overall, this is still a great and very memorable movie, especially considering everything else we've gotten in Phase 4. At number 16, we got the very underrated Iron Man 3. I loved the development into Tony's character in this film. Loved how his past mistakes caught up to him. Loved the Christmas theme. I wasn't super hyped about Iron Patriot, but in the end he turned back into War Machine afterwards, so not a big issue. Wasn't huge on the Mandarin like everyone else, but I still think it worked out perfectly, given the story. And honestly, just a great movie overall. To break into the top 15, we got the one that started it all, the first Iron Man film. And wow, is this movie a classic. Again, showing us why we love Iron Man the way we do. A man is just an arrogant rich billionaire to start with. He's completely changed when he's kidnapped and forced to see soldiers die at the hand of his weapons that he profits off. He builds the Iron Man suit to escape, and this sets him off on his hero's journey. Just overall a great film. Obadiah works as a great villain for Tony, as he was his friend who got jealous and wanted to take over the company. And everything just works great in this film, from the characters to the storyline to the plot to the visuals. It's just amazing. And the fact that it's the first MCU entry but still stands in the top 15 right now just shows you how great it really is. Moving on though to number 14, we got What If, the only animated series thus far. I love the concept of the show. The episode where Doctor Strange loses Christine rather than his hands is the most beautiful episode I've seen in the MCU. Just love how it all connects at the end, and how each story is just so unique. The first episode is a bit boring, but it makes it up for it as it goes. The zombies episode was amazing, and glad they're expanding on it soon. The episode Killmonger Saves Tony is also great. And of course, the episode with Ultron menacing that he was in the actual movie was amazing too. Just a great series, and I'm glad it's getting a season 2. At number 13, we got the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This movie was such a good expansion on the first one. Although, spoiler alert, the first one is number 12, and they really are interchangeable on this order of the list for me. Anyway, Yondu was an amazing character, and I loved his development in this one. Loved the development of Rocket. Ego was a great villain. Mantis was a great addition to the team. The balance between comedy and seriousness works really well in these movies. And this movie had one of the most heartfelt deaths in the MCU besides the Endgame deaths, of course. At spot number 12, like I said, we got the first Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, this is the movie that proved Marvel could bring any character from the comics. As long as they did it right, people would love it. James Gunn did a beautiful job bringing these characters to life. The story about how important family is, and how your past doesn't define you, and you can choose who you want to really be in this life, hits a certain spot in my heart. Really love these films, and hope Guardians of the Galaxy 3 hits the same level. At spot number 11, we got Moon Knight. Now, some people might not agree with this spot being so high, but I don't personally care. I loved Moon Knight, and I've been waiting to see him in the MCU for so long. Oscar Isaac's acting in this was phenomenal. Loved the exploration into his dissociative identity disorder. The villain was probably my favorite in the Disney Plus series. Ethan Hawke as Arthur Harrow is just so wonderful to watch. and he has a great motive behind him. I love Layla's addition in the show, and how she became the Scar Scarab. I think people just wanted to see more of Moon Knight being actually Moon Knight, but I'm okay with more of a character study on Stephen Grant and Mark Spector, and their dynamics with each other. I'm sure Season 2 will have more Moon Knight in action, though overall, I love the series. To start off our top 10, we got our final Disney Plus series, Loki. The best thing to come from the Disney Plus stuff for sure. Love the way they showed the beginning of the multiverse using Loki from the past in Endgame. Loved how Loki is so narcissistic, he falls in love with a variant of himself in Sylvie, who is also a great character. Though the best part of the series is the end, where we get to see the next big bad, Kang. This part put heavy hope in me for future Marvel projects. Though again, the show itself overall is very interesting and definitely somewhat of a mindfuck going through it the first time. Very excited for Season 2 of the show. At number 9, we got the very overhated movie, in my opinion, with Doctor Strange Into the Multiverse of Madness. Now, I do believe the hatred of this movie comes from people setting up their own expectations and what they will believe will be shown in the multiverse. When obviously a lot of that stuff, like Deadpool and the exploration of multiple universes, are being saved for later projects like Secret Wars, and this movie was just taking a drop out of the ocean. Though I still think this movie was wonderful. It shows how Doctor Strange lost Christine, and although can't have her, keeps doing the right thing. And let's not forget the amazing continuation of Wanda's descent into insanity. Truly a great sight and a great continuation of her story, as she goes full on evil without even realizing it, because she's so lost in her own grief. I just think this movie was beautiful and really met my own expectations. Moving on to number 8, we have Doctor Strange, the first one that is. This movie is another underrated movie in my opinion, to be honest. The story and concepts in this movie are truly beautiful. I love how the whole thing is about Stephen's self-discovery into belief and realizing how small he is, and it drops down his ego along the way. It is such a trip to watch. Love the usage of time and all the symbolism throughout the movie regarding death and time. Everything just works perfectly in the story, not to mention the beautiful visuals we got in this movie. Also, the villain in this movie was pretty decent. Caecilius really uses death as a perfect motivator. Overall, just a great movie. On to number 7, we got Black Panther. Now, this is one of my favorite isolated stories in the MCU. Killmonger is an amazing villain. Another top 5, if not top 3 villain in the MCU. His motives are very understandable, and although that doesn't justify what he wants to do, it makes him very sympathetic. Not to mention, Michael B. Jordan does an amazing job playing him. The late Chadwick Boseman played an amazing T'Challa, may he rest in peace. There's so much depth to the story in here, with T'Challa becoming king and having to decide whether to open up Wakanda or not, and deal with the upcoming threat of Killmonger and Claw. I also love the chemistry between T'Challa and Nakia, along with the supporting characters like Shuri. They were amazing as well. Honestly, a beautiful film and definitely deserved every single one of those Oscar nominations. Very excited for Wakanda Forever. At number 6, I have Thor Ragnarok. Despite the other Thor movies being so low, this one is the exception. This movie, unlike Love and Thunder, balances the comedy and seriousness of the plot pretty well. This movie has a great story and shows the best development and growth of Thor as a character. The stakes in this movie are amazing and truly wrenching. Hela is a great villain, Valkyrie was a great addition, and I love the growth of Hulk and especially Loki in this movie. Hulk fits in this movie perfectly, and everything about this movie was beautiful, from the colors to the visuals to the story. Everything just works in this movie. Now, on to our top 5. At number 5, we got Captain America Civil War. This movie was great. I loved how it showed both sides pretty well, even though the movie definitely has a slight bias to Captain America, but it's okay. Definitely felt more like an Avengers movie, but whatever. The story was still primarily about Captain America. Loved the introductions with Spider-Man and Black Panther, as well as Ant-Man joining the scene. Truly one of the best comic book movies ever, to be honest. The airport battle is the best ever. Everything just fits so well with it, and I love the design of Captain America. Now, at number 4, we got Captain America, the Winter Soldier. This movie it's perfect. It's a great political thriller and exploration into S.H.I.E.L.D. and what turns out to be Hydra. It's a great deeper exploration into Captain America and what makes him tick, and the movie makes him question his allegiance to S.H.I.E.L.D. It truly shows a unique idea of bringing Captain America, the man, out of his time. It has a great exploration in his relationship with Bucky, and it introduced Falcon in a subtle but impactful way. It has a great flow and pacing. The story is great. Everything just works well in this movie, and definitely proves the greatness of the Russo brothers and why they went on to make 4 of the greatest MCU films. Now, onto our top 3. Now, to be honest, these 3 are probably interchangeable for me, but this was the way I believed I'd rank them. At the number 3 spot, we got Avengers Endgame. This movie is amazing. It dives into the aftermath of Endgame, where the Avengers go 5 years without a solution to what Thanos did. Then, thanks to Ant-Man coming back and Tony's genius, they find out how to do time travel. So they can go back in time and grab the stones to snap their own fingers. Of course, this leads to the beginning of Loki and the multiverse opening up, but we didn't know that at the time. Anyway, during the time heist, Thanos from 2014 also comes back, which leads to the biggest fight scene we've ever seen involving every alive character in the MCU up to this point in 2019. It was insane. But besides this, the beautiful dopamine pumping scene, the movie had a great story about the Avengers battling and learning from their mistakes, and the most important thing they missed in the first movie with the Infinity War was sacrifice. The thing Thanos did to win, and the thing they failed to do in Infinity War, they did it here. Of course, this movie had the best send-off possible for Iron Man, Captain America, and Black Widow. It was very emotional, and everything just worked perfectly, especially considering how large it was and how much it had to fit in.
And I am Iron Man.
At the number 2 spot, we got Avengers Infinity War. Now, this movie is special. The only downfall of Endgame is we don't get to see the overall MCU collide that much with each other and interact with each other outside of the main 7 Avengers, Ant-Man, Rocket, Captain Marvel, and Nebula, until the end. And even then, it's just small moments between characters. In this movie, we get Doctor Strange interacting with Spider-Man and Iron Man for the first time, the Guardians meeting Thor, and then later showing up in Wakanda to meet Black Panther, and the rest of the team, of course. The pacing of this movie is insanely fast, and it works so well. Everyone in the movie has their moments, and overall, this was a movie that made Thanos such a great and interesting villain. It was what made us know that those 10 years of waiting in the MCU was paying off to see the real big threat. Of course, this movie at the end has a huge twist of killing off half of our favorite characters, including Black Panther, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange, among many others. Of course, this all doesn't matter the year after, but it still happened. Anyway, such a great movie, and intriguing, of course, and a perfect compilation of the MCU thus far. At the top spot, at number 1, we have Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, the way those last 2 were great accumulations of the MCU, this movie was a great accumulation of all the live Spider-Man movies, except the Japanese version, of course. Regardless, to see Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire reprise their roles as Spider-Man was beautiful.
Peter, what is it?
This movie was a true love letter to all the Spider-Man fans. It had the best villains from the movies. Sandman and the Lizard were amazing. The Sandman was done great, having the same motives to get back to his daughter. The Lizard was still as menacing, even though he might have not done much overall, he still showed it. Jamie Foxx truly turned around his role in Electro. of course, made his appearance more comic accurate, but even his motives were more clear, and he was much more interesting and likable. Alfred Molina, of course, did an amazing job back in his role, and showed how Otto was truly just a broken man out of his control. And of course, let's talk about the best one yet, Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin. Even though he destroyed the mask by the beginning of the second act, he did an amazing job seeming as menacing as he was in 2002, maybe even more so. Daredevil's cameo in the movie was great, and Doctor Strange worked really well in this movie without taking away the light from Spider-Man. Of course, the death of Aunt May was hugely impactful to the MCU's Peter, and definitely showed him some consequences to his actions. I also love the development in MJ and Peter's relationship, and if all the other Spider-Man films. This whole movie showed Peter that he lost everything by the end. It was truly a deep dive into his character. And like I said, it was a true love letter to the Spider-Man fans everywhere. Anyway guys, that's my ranking of all the MCU projects. I hope you enjoyed it. And just remember, this is my opinion. If you have a different opinion on this list, please drop it down in the comments below. Also, please drop a like and a subscribe, as it would help me out a lot. Thank you guys. Have a good one.